took on various right-wing Central and South American landowners and businessmen as clients, among them a group of Guatemalans.
Was not a Guatemalan government. It was a foreign government controlled by foreigners.
And that happened just here in the continent.
Right here in America.
Iraq. In Iraq in 1958, General Abdel Karim Qasem led a coup, took power, and proclaimed a republic. He legalized the Communist Party and decreed land reform, granting autonomy to the Kurds. CIA Director Allen Dulles declared Iraq, quote, the most dangerous spot in the world, and in 1963 the CIA-supported Ba'ath Party overthrew Qasem. The Ba'ath Party shared power until 1968, when the CIA again instigated a coup that culminated in the rise of Saddam Hussein. Hussein had been on the CIA payroll since his early 20s. In 1980, Saddam invaded Iran in fear of the potential Iranian revolutionary influence among his country's majority Shiites. Iran began to win the war in 1982, and the U.S., in fear of the Iranian Revolution, began to covertly bank Banca Nacional del Lavaro, guaranteed by the taxpayers under the Commodity Credit Corporation, to, quote, promote American farm exports, unquote. Between 1986 and 1989, 73 transactions took place that included bacterial cultures for anthrax production, advanced computers, and equipment to repair jets and rockets. In 2002, Iraq was forced to deliver an 11,800-page dossier on the history of its weapons program to the UN Security Council. Bush administration officials took possession of the document first and cut 8,000 pages that detailed American and Western company sales of weapons and dual-use technology sold to Iraq prior to 1991. The legacy of the NSA Act of 1947 that established the national security state had the obvious consequences of the overthrow of dozens of legitimately elected foreign governments during the Cold War. The unintended consequences of blowback has led to a more hostile environment for U.S. national interest in the 21st century, but it has led to other less obvious consequences to the American Republic itself. The power of the U.S. intelligence agencies to overthrow foreign governments at will has also impacted the domestic American political landscape. The ability to destabilize the world almost at will has conferred the same ability to these agencies in American politics. For men with this kind of power, the temptation to play God on the American landscape and to control the future direction and fate of the United States has been irresistible.
The temptation to use public power and play God is almost irresistible.
The Golden Triangle. In China in 1949, the Communists under Mao Zedong drove out the U.S.-backed nationalist warlord Chiang Kai-shek with his defeated army, the KMT, the Kuomintang. They fled to the Golden Triangle and to Taiwan. Within the Golden Triangle, they took over opium production to finance weapons purchases and the finer things in life. By the 1950s, heroin had become a nationwide concern in the United States. From Senate hearings to popular movies, criminologists blamed addicts for soaring crime rates. These KMT operations were hidden from the U.S. public for 30 years, and it is only recently Afghanistan has captured 90% of the world heroin market. The U.S. exploited the Hmong and Montagnard tribesmen as a source of opium and used the CIA's Air America to bring in guns and supplies in exchange for drugs. Large quantities of heroin appeared in the United States, much of it smuggled inside the bodies of dead American GIs. Addiction plagued the Army in Vietnam to the point of reducing their fighting capacity, and after the war these men brought their drug problem home with them. The U.S. government promoted the drug traffic and intervened to make sure traffic would not be discovered. In the words of one former investigator, quote, "You'd be running a criminal investigation, say narcotics. You'd find out that Inspector so-and-so of your national police is involved in this. You investigate up to a point and you can't go any further. It would go to our headquarters, and then it would go to Washington, and nothing would ever happen. The intelligence gleaned from these people was more important than stopping the drug traffic. The senior public relations man for the DEA offers the explanation, quote, "Their mission was to get people to fight against the communists, not to stop the drug traffic." Iran-Contra. A secret program by the Reagan administration circumvented Congress and illegally sold weapons to Iran, a terrorist nation, in order to pay for a guerrilla war against the Sandinista Nicaraguan government. When the operation was uncovered, it also uncovered an off-the-books operation that, in the words of Senator Daniel Inouye, was a secret government with its own permanent funding mechanism and its own Army, Navy, and Air Force. The exposure of the Iran-Contra operation revealed the tip of the iceberg. Admiral Richard Secord ran a many-faceted program that concentrated on banking fraud, drug smuggling, and illegal arms dealing by officers and former officers of the U.S. military. Oliver L. North, a Marine lieutenant colonel, was assigned to the National Security Council staff beginning in 1981 until he was fired in 1986. North was the White House official most directly involved in secretly aiding the Contras, selling arms to Iran, and diverting Iran arms sales proceeds to the Contras. North was Deputy Director for Political Military Affairs and reported to his superior National Security Advisor, Robert C. McFarland, and later John M. Poindexter. He claimed to have taken much of his direction from Central Intelligence Agency Director William Casey. North testified repeatedly that he believed President Reagan was aware and approving of his activities. North was indicted in 1988 on 16 Iran-Contra charges. He was found guilty on 3 counts. His convictions were vacated in 1990 when an appeals court found that witnesses in his trial were prejudiced by his immunized congressional testimony. Many figures that came under criminal investigation and prosecution in Iran-Contra, like John Poindexter, Elliot Abrams, Richard Armitage, Dick Cheney, Otto Reich, Colin Powell, and John Negroponte, returned to serve in both Bush administrations without serious challenge from Congress. The Contras and the Crips. A San Francisco Bay Area drug ring sold tons of cocaine to the Crips and Blood street gangs of Los Angeles, funneled millions in profits directly to the Contra guerrillas, run by the Central Intelligence Agency. This drug network opened the first pipeline between Colombia's cocaine cartels and the black neighborhoods of Los Angeles, a city now known as the crack capital of the world. Gary Webb broke the story that no other major newspaper would run, and was found murdered in what can only be described as a staged suicide.
We had Contra pilots flying out of Ilopango, smuggling drugs into the U.S., cocaine specifically.
For America, bound from military airfields in Florida and Texas, offloaded out of sight of the law, then shipped to California and other points in the U.S.
Point blank, stay away from it. It's a covert operation being run by the White House.
The highest councils of our government, in the White House and in the Justice Department. There is no question of that. I can document that.
Turns up wrongdoing. If it turns up wrongdoing, we will bring the people to justice and make them accountable.
The Russian Mind Control Program. Controlled Offensive Behavior, USSR, is a 1972 U.S. Army study of Soviet mind control experimentation. The Russian Directed Energy Weapons Program focused on targeting of individuals, not groups. Soviet dissidents were the target of microwave anti-personnel weapons and mind-altering techniques that sought, quote, the total submission